Hello, my name is Amanda Forbes-Borer. I'm a PhD researcher here at the Institute of Archaeology, UCL, and this presentation is about the use of replicas and their relationship to authenticity. What's in the session? So we'll be looking at some of the challenges of using replicas, some case studies of using replicas, and then also some questions about authenticity and archaeological objects. There's three questions that I just want to set out there, and I'll repeat them again at the end to be thinking about throughout the presentation. So for the use of replicas, what management challenges do we encounter using replicas, and what are the pros and cons of using replicas? And then in terms of communicating authenticity, where do replicas fit within the debate about object authenticity? So first of all, I'd like to look at some issues to do with management of digital copies in particular. And this is a situation that had come up recently to do with the bust of Nefertiti that the Neues Museum in Berlin has, whereby they'd had an artist do some full colour scans that were then going to produce a digital copy. But the museum decided to keep those colour scans under lock and key, so for their own use. The artist Wenman actually took on the museum and eventually was given a high quality copy of those scans, and Wenman then immediately put them online and made them free for all. And so this raises questions about who owns scans of objects, whether they are produced as digital objects or if they're just virtual scans. Is it the artist? Is it the museum who holds the object? Is it the country or the place of origin where the object was excavated? Is it the original artist who, in this case 3,000 years ago, would have made the object? So it just raises some interesting issues. This is quite a different example of an exhibition, the Tutankhamun exhibition in Dorchester, which is an exhibition purely with replicas. And you can see there I've got a variety of pictures. On the outside it looks a little bit like you're at a Disneyland or something going on a ride, the outside of it. The inside of it, we've got some contrasts because we've got that sort of model there of the sarcophagus and so on being lifted, the coffin being lifted from the sarcophagus, juxtaposed with the gallery where the objects are very much on display in what I'd call a staged authenticity. So, it's trying to look like a museum. And people with me visiting, I had family visiting the exhibition with me, said to me, but are you sure none of these objects are real? And I could really understand that because the way they were shown was very much like a museum and giving off this air of them being authentic, real objects. There was also something quite disturbing for me at this exhibition because there is a replica of supposedly Tutankhamun's mummy, and it is totally exposed, and that would not be the case if it was the real mummy, and it brings up issues for me about then the display of an object because it's a replica, yet it is still a representation of the person. So some interesting comments there. Moving on now to think about the case studies and the use of replicas. This is an example of the World Museum Liverpool, where we have a 3D print replica of a Shabti, which has got no case around it. You can go up and touch it, right beside where Shabtis are being displayed. Now, you can see from the graphics and the pictures that this is appealing to a younger audience. I certainly went up and touched the object. So just an interesting idea there about touch and the way we interact with objects. In the British Museum, we've got an example there of the Sutton Hoo helmet, and on display you can actually see, so in the right picture, the helmet facing us is the original, and there to the side in that same display we have a replica. We also I have a picture of the replica showing you, and so here we're working with the idea of wanting to show how the object was possibly in its original condition. So it's wanting to work with that sort of idea for an audience. Here we've got an example in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, and this architrave from the time of Caffrey. When I saw it, I didn't actually pay much attention to it. It's in a gallery with other authentic objects, and I don't know what drew my attention to it, but then I noticed the long label there, or the information panel, and I read that it was a fiberglass a replica, and so it drew my attention. The black and white picture at the top is showing the object where it remains in situ. So here we've got an interesting point that we are showing the object, and the object is able to be in more than one place at a time, and the original, though, remains in situ. An interesting side to this, my husband's a geologist, and I drew his attention to the object without explaining why, and I just asked him to engage about the material. And when you looked closely, it was clear to see that it wasn't granite, but it wasn't something that particularly stood out to you within the gallery as being that. Two examples now in the Soudan National Museum in Khartoum. So this is one that is likewise a fiberglass replica of an object then that remains in situ and is largely, in fact, buried, not entirely exposed in situ. This labelling and this information panel I really like because of the information that it gives about the making of the replica as well. And we're, of course, working here with this idea again of having the object still in situ as well as being on display, possibly being protected in situ as well as being in the gallery that we're able to see. And this example in the Sudan National Museum in Khartoum also. So on the right, with the label in Arabic and in English, we have a cast of the bronze head of Emperor Augustus, and that object itself, the original, is actually in the British Museum. So there we have on the left where it was part of an exhibition in recent years, and it was being placed, so the staff looking at there. The labelling in the museum in Khartoum actually explains that the original is in the British Museum. So here we have a use of replicas, I suppose, like a virtual repatriation, or I don't know, some way again of having the object in more than one place, but of being able to bring a replica to its country where it was excavated in place of the original. And this is an interesting example from a company, Amarte, of a reconstruction of Tutmosis III tomb, which is in the Valley of the Kings, KV 34. So the picture on the right with the photographer in it is actually the recreation. So we have all of the reliefs as well as the physical building being, or the room being recreated. On the left is the original tomb. You can tell because it's got the glass panels over the reliefs in an attempt to try to protect them. So here we're drawing attention to the fact that the original was not under good conservation or good repair. It can't sustain having lots of people coming in and seeing it, and it is quite a famous tomb, and a tomb that a lot of people want to see. By the same token, we have this recreated in Bolton, but also in North America. It was recreated in some museums as well. So we're drawing attention to the original. We're learning about it, but it's not having been removed. It remains in situ, but then also hopefully we turn around and can assist with some conservation of that original object. And this is a project I'm involved with at the Petrie Museum in collaboration with the Manchester Museum and Think C3D. So this is also a statuette of Tutmosis III, where the head of the statue is in the Petrie Museum, and that body part was found to be in Manchester Museum. So we've actually commissioned and had a digital replica of both parts done, and then the intention is to supply a head part to Manchester and a body part to the Petrie Museum, and we're able to then have a reunion of types of the statuette. And that picture there closest to the text is that production of the digitally produced replica. And finally, now I'd like to just refer to my PhD research, which is Teens Digitally Produced Replica Shabtis and Ancient Realness, or another name for talking about the qualities of authenticity. You can see there the teens that I've been working with in my focus groups in Manchester, Sudan, and also in Australia, a place called Namurka. And the teens have been engaging with the replicas and creating their own narratives, which they're going to be used to communicate with people about the authenticity of the object and how we create the biography of narratives, the stories to do with authenticity. And so, to that end, I just wanted to touch briefly on a debate about authenticity relating to archaeological objects and some different perspectives. So, we've got the materialist perspective, which sees that there are inherent provable qualities of objects which can be authenticated by experts. And then we have a constructivist perspective, which sees that authenticity is a negotiable, culturally constructed idea, and this is more audience-centred. And then also a postmodernist perspective, which suggests that authenticity is purely in the eye of the beholder. And in this perspective, in fact, the truth of authenticity is irrelevant. So these are some things that I'm going to be looking at in my research. So I just really now want to return to those three questions that I put there in the beginning and ask you, what do you think? You know, what are some management challenges to do with using replicas? What are the pros and cons of using replicas? And where do replicas fit within the debate about authenticity? Thank you.